Well, hello and welcome again to the Scaling Up Business Podcast. I'm your host and scaling coach, Bill Gallagher. So we're talking today with Mark Grimes. And I don't know about you, but I think we've all had, some of us have ideas all day long. And mostly we say, right, it's about the execution, not the ideas. But Mark's tried to push the limits here, and he has a novel story, and I haven't heard it yet. So I'm interested and curious to hear what he has to say. Mark's is 31 startups in 31 days. So he started 31 different things, and he's trying to get them profitable in 90 days. And we'll hear how that's going. And it would go against the conventional wisdom of everything we talk about, which is to focus on just a couple of things and get those right before you go on to that. So we're going to talk to Mark Grimes, who's in Portland, Oregon area, in just a second. I want to remind everyone we're here with a new show every week. We're actually recording two as it happens today. So if you happen to watch during the recording live stream, you'll see and hear this live. And then, of course, we release them Wednesday mornings. There's over 226 episodes now on every subject for the last few years. So go find anything to do with people, strategy, execution, cash at scalingcoach.com. Also, downloads of all of the tools that are referenced and the offers, easy for me to say, right? By our guests that you might want relative to the show. You'll find all that at scalingcoach.com. Links all there. Also, in this time, we're seeing unprecedented demand for coaching services. So there's 200 coaches in our world. If we can help match you with a coach who is in the scaling up world, but does things in your way or with kind of your vibe or your personality, will help you to find somebody who's suitable for you. All right. With all that dispensed, Mark Grimes, welcome to the show.
Hey, Bill, thanks for having me here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So, Mark, I don't even know where to get. It's so far out there, which is why you're on the show.
Sure.
Startup founder, angel investor, philanthropist. He's worked in creative agency type stuff, had a variety of businesses over the years, and works today coaching, mentoring. I don't even know if I have it all right. You'll correct me, but developing things and talking about startup, that early stage of the company. And he just did this thing to launch 31, and you're now in the phase of getting them cash flow, right? Cash positive.
That's right. That's exactly it. Yep. After a very long 31 first days in August, launching one a day. And at the end of that, now we're in the phase of 90 days to cash flow positive, which ends the 30th of November.
So tell us a little bit more about your background before we get into this story, why you did this and how it's going and like that.
Sure. So I started my first company in 1989. It was a consulting and newsletter company aimed at directors of marketing of performing arts groups in the United States and globally. Nothing like it existed. I was relatively young, 31 years younger than I am now, and managed to get it to cash flow positive in under 90 days. Actually, that one was in under 30 days. Had clients ranging from the Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago to the Kennedy Center, the Lincoln Center, amazing clients around the world. Grew it for about 2.5 years, over 500 or so clients. Ended up getting particularly bored with it because there was not a lot of there. I mean, there was, but as far as engaging in my time and everything else, kind of got bored with it. So sold it and then moved on to the next thing. And I've been doing nothing but either starting my own companies or helping other people start their own companies since then, and investing in companies, mainly just, doing and starting my own things.
And what stage or size are these? Micro investments or, what kinds of companies are we talking about?
That I invest in or that I start, or both?
Both, I guess.
Okay. So in a round of angel deals that my wife and I did about 15 years ago, it was anywhere from 25 to 100,000 per company we'd invest,
Uh-huh.
which is kind of funny because I've never put that kind of money in investing in my own startup. It's always a lot less than that. So
Mm.
all my things, and one of the reasons they've been cash flow positive in 90 days or less with the things I've started in the past is I'm very, very focused on just squeezing costs as far down as I can at the start and making sure that there are potential customers and paying customers there as the thing starts, launches, and grows. I've managed to grow 2 companies into the millions of dollars per year of sales. The highest one or the largest one being an interactive advertising agency, which we ran for 6.5 years. Offices in Portland, San Francisco, New York, 40 staff members, and 7+ million a year in revenue. Again, not huge. I mean, these aren't monster companies, but they're more than a ma and pa, local grocery store too.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Interesting. And so your career is 31 years long, and you along the way. So, well, tell us the story of the 31 startups. Talk about that.
Sure. So I have 2 current existing companies. One's a co-working space that we started in downtown Portland.
Uh-huh.
It's coming up on 12 years old. Now,
Mm.
keep in mind, I'm a startup guy. So 12 years, I mean, I feel like I'm way past the time of golden watch on that one. I mean, 12 years is way not a startup anymore.
Mhm.
And then I have a podcast network that's aimed at startups and entrepreneurs. And we do 5 live streaming shows every Friday.
Every
And that one's
Friday.
been going on for about 3 years too.
Mm-hmm.
While they still both exist right now, the pandemic changed them both as it has changed almost everybody's business. And suddenly I found myself with a lot of time at home. Our 3 adult sons are, in their 20s and doing their own things. I've got a list I've been building for, well over a decade at this stage that has over 350 startup ideas. As so many, as so many founders do. I mean, I admit to be probably I've got entrepreneurial ADD. Always come up with those ideas, as so many do. And so I was looking through the list uh, and
But
trying
you
to
actually
figure out.
write them down, right? Like I go sporadically in and out of writing down, but mostly now I'm like, I just let them go. They come in one ear and out the other.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what I do. I just write them down in a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Yep, yep. Just jot them down and try to be really clear about it too, because sometimes the notes are so half-assed. I look back, in a month or two, and it's like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like what seemed like a good idea at 2 a.m, maybe not 3 months later or 3 years later. So, excuse me. So I was looking at the list and decided, and something I've been wanting to do was, it was hard to narrow it down to just 1 or 2 or 3. I
Mhm.
finally figured I wanted to do something I've been wanting to do for, quite frankly, a number of years now. So I talked to my wife in June of this year about launching 31 startups in 31 days because I knew I had to have her sign off because it wasn't going to be this wasn't a 2-hour side project kind of a gig. And
Yeah.
she said, sure. She says, but why don't you not do it in July? Why don't you do it in August? Give yourself a month, build up, get ready. So I'm like, okay, I'll do that. So I gave myself a month and did absolutely nothing to still prepare for it. So I was just as behind the 8 ball in August 1st as I would have been in July. And then August 1st started. And I wanted to start from square one. The whole idea was to do it in public, to build in public, to not have all these side back deals so it would all look good and shiny and neat and pretty. It was to really do it, to show people how to do it with their own ideas.
Uh-huh. So what does it mean to launch to you? What is
Good question.
what does that qualify as a launch?
That's an excellent question, and nobody's asked that before.
Uh,
Nobody's asked that since August. What
mm.
is a launch? What is a start? What is a startup? And what's cash flow positive? Because that's everything I'm doing, right? So nobody's asked those questions yet. So A launch to me, and again, this is going back to what I've done since 1989. A launch to me is saying, here's the business model. I'm now going to talk to X, and that X can, depending on the business, can be 8 potential customers or 20 or 30 potential customers. So the launch is, here's the idea, here's what it does, and then starting to talk to customers right away. That's the launch. The launch doesn't have to certainly be at all a business plan. It doesn't have to be a website. You don't have to have the specific domain ready. You certainly don't have to have it legally registered. If I had to do that at 31 companies, I'd have been 100 or 200 grand in the hole just to say we're going to do the thing.
So launch just means really you're beginning to actually work on it with some interaction other than in your head. It's out of your head now, and it's in between you and other people.
Exactly.
Okay. That's the definition of a launch.
Yep. The launch is, it's out of the head, it's on paper or on a website or whatever the case might be here. In this case, Medium and LinkedIn, et cetera, Twitter, whatnot. So the idea is out there. Here's what it is. People are free to steal it and borrow it if they think it's good. They're free to point at it and say that's a bunch of bullshit. Whatever they want to do, I'm fine with that. I'm just doing it publicly, knowing full well that while the goal is to get to 90 days to cash flow positive, once the last one's launched, knowing that all 31 are highly unlikely to get there, but more than one will probably get there.
So it's shotgun approach for sure. You're just going to throw out a whole bunch of and see what sticks, right? Throw it up against the wall, as they say.
To a certain degree, yeah. I mean, I would like all 31 to get to cash flow positive. That's a goal. I'm not leaving anything for dead until the very last day. I'm not deciding. I'm not going to decide, 70 days in, that one's a goner. I will wait until the end. Now, some may get to no revenue. Some may get to a few hundred in revenue, and some may get to a few thousands in revenue. It's hard to say. We've had people estimate guesses of anywhere from a couple of grand to I think the biggest guess so far is $1.75 million. and I'm pulling for that person to be right, but I don't think it's going to quite hit there either.
Okay, so then comes and cash flow positive seems pretty obvious. There's sales greater than 0 and greater than your expenses, right?
Exactly, and I could
on a cash basis.
Yeah, and one could, people would need to take a look at kind of the list of the 31 companies, but obviously you could game the system and the whole thing could be just a game, right? So day one could be, I'm going to launch the red crayon company, and I could buy that box of red crayons for $1, sell it for $2, and I win. It's cash flow positive. Now, I look like a chump and a fool to do something like that, so that's not the idea, but you're right. The idea is you're going to do the thing, you're going to share the thing, and by the way, 100% of all income, all revenue, and all expenses are being done online too, so people can go and see, excuse me, what's been spent where. But the idea is to try to get it to real cash flow positive and have it build or on its way towards building into what could be a real sustainable business.
So let's bring this to life with some examples, maybe not all 31, but let's talk about a few of them before we probe why on earth you would do this.
Yeah.
Right? So I see number 1 is Tillamook Axe Company.
Yep.
What is that all about?
Okay. So kind of pre-COVID, actually axe throwing businesses were becoming kind of a thing. Early stage, whether they were separate entities, party-related things, or in some cases, bars and taverns and that kind of thing, though I would not recommend hurling axes and drinking heavily is not really a good combination. And again, to each his own. So I looked at that. I looked at the business. I thought about it. I've still to this day never thrown an axe. Not to this day. So
you never thrown an axe?
Not yet.
But you saw this and you thought people need more targets.
People need good targets, right? Because they're kind of, if you're not a woodworker, you can go out and buy axes at Home Depot and Amazon, and which I have now since done. So I have them. I just haven't hucked one yet. Okay, but I met a husband and wife that have a precision woodworking company that do super high-end things in Bay City, Oregon, which is a coastal town, approached them with the idea, and they're on board with it. So I'm working with them. Actually
Okay.
got a photo for the first time over the weekend of the first kind of the guts of the very first axe target company. So it's just the guts of it, which is the main part of the target. Now it needs to go up on what amounts to a stand, because it really needs to be built pretty precisely to kind of meet the specifications of, believe it or not, what is called the World Axe Throwing League, with over
I've
100.
seen that on TV, cable, etc. Like
Okay. Perfect.
axe throwing, log splitting. We've seen lots of these sort of woodsman, whatever they call it, type events. I know nothing about it, but
Yep.
and I have thrown an axe, and not just at roadkill. But like in camp activities, right? In fact, last year, we had axe throwing at like an axe throwing station at an entrepreneur camp I went to.
Very cool. Very cool. When I was a kid down in Albany, Oregon, they used to have the World Championship Timber Carnival. And there was axe throwing and tree climbing and, log rolling in a big man-made lake. I mean, some amazing fun stuff.
I like it. Okay, so you've started the Tillamook Axe Company is gonna sell axe throwing targets, not axes, but at least to start, right?
Not to start. I mean, yeah, well, I'm not going to get too crazy.
Now, did you see a need for this, or did you just think we should make this?
I think it's a market opportunity based on what's hot that's out there. I have a hard time defining an axe throwing target company as what is the problem that it's looking to solve. It is to a certain degree, because it's like, if you're not good at woodworking, you're not going to be able to build this thing to the specs you need it to. But that's really
kids to go run fast while you throw axes at
them. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So you're going to do this, and you now have a supplier, and you're going to sell them online, I'm guessing.
Yep, we'll sell them online and start to poke around some locations in Tillamook, just so we can get some more video and photos of the things being done. But here's the I don't know. You can't really call it secret sauce, because A, I'm going to say it. B, it's not even proven to be a good idea yet.
Right.
So we're starting an axe throwing podcast. and you'll love the fact that we're calling it Axe Me Anything.
All right. Now that's within this company, not a separate company, right?
It's within this company, not a separate one, but I surely could have made it nice to have it be one of the others, because it would have made my life easier anyway. So what we're doing, we actually have 8 guests lined up already.
Okay.
I'm not going to be one of the hosts, because I'm too busy doing other things. So what we're going to do is we're going to start having these people that are, as you can imagine, a lot of them really characters, right? These are interesting people. And they're going to talk about axe throwing, what attracted them to it, what they do during the day. It's just a study in people and interesting ideas.
I have a feeling I know a few characters.
Yep. A lot of characters. And guess who will sponsor that podcast? The Tillamook Axe Company. There you go.
So you'll sell these targets online, right? I guess you'll want your questions on the podcast to be very much on target, right?
Bada boom. Nice. Love it.
Okay, so there's one. This is one of 31 for our listeners, right? All right, let's pick another one randomly. Walden for Founders. What's that all
about? So a few years ago, I actually did a podcast, and we had, I don't remember now. It was either over 200 or 300 episodes. And it was all about the tiny house movement. So all about kind of all about small space living. While I could never live in one full time, I'm still enamored by the idea. I'm also kind of appreciative of the idea of container living, which is similar with shipping containers that are kind of done in 320-foot cubes, basically, for shipping containers. But I like the idea of a founder community of people living together in high-end containers, uh, like 12 to 15 people, founders, and they're big enough that, and you can put two together, so you can go from 320 to 640 square feet. But they're big enough that you could live in them relatively comfortably, especially if you're working a startup and you're not home 168 hours a week on top of that. But the whole idea is a community of somewhat like-minded people together, at least focused on growing their businesses.
Uh-huh. See, I probably would call this entrepreneur in a box.
Yeah. I need to get you as my PR guy. This is awesome.
Founder in a box.
Perfect. Yep. Founder in a box. Let me out.
No, containers can be really cool. Container living, container houses, container offices. Yep. And we've seen them in, whether it's Zurich or Berlin or across the US now, more and more of these things, people turning them into cool structures. So it can be kind of cool. It does have that living in a box connotation, though. And the same thing true really with the tiny home, but there's something kind of cool about, and I think really appealing for people in the simplicity of it. It's certainly the antithesis of the micro mansion, as people get fatigued with things.
Agreed with you. And I have seen those founders that I've met over certainly the last number of years, though. They get an incredible pile of cash. They buy a bunch of junk. Junk can mean airplanes or $200,000 cars, whatever. And then they start to realize that really didn't make them that happy. So then they start to go in a different direction of kind of minimalism and less stuff and more experiences and more meaning. And to a certain degree, this is kind of meant to embrace that kind of group too. Because maybe you're going to live in this Walden experience on the Oregon coast, but then maybe after a year and a half, you decide you want to do it in the location in London or some other place. So guess what? You can easily pack up your stuff and go and relocate, and you'll still have a similar community of people to kind of hang with.
Yeah, London wouldn't be so Walden-like, though.
That's true. Good point.
Gritty, maybe, and depending on which part of town, right? We've got tons of startups in like Shoreditch neighborhood and containers, right? There's lots of there's like container. There's actually there's a hub co-working space in the container that's all in containers in the Shoreditch neighborhood.
Yep. Okay, cool.
So do you have a location? Do you have a supplier of these containers? Do you have people who want to live in them?
We have I have a half a dozen different companies based on connections with the Tiny House podcast that either have done containers or could do containers based on their building experiences. And I've got two founders that have at best right now, kind of a vague interest in doing it. But again, this all doesn't count until somebody writes checks. So vague interest doesn't really matter until somebody says, okay, here's 25 grand down for this thing that you're going to build in Bend, Oregon, or the Oregon coast, or Mount Hood, wherever.
So this is really, we have possible people involved. We're talking, right?
Yep.
State, right?
Yep.
Okay,
exactly.
Good. Yep. Let's take a really different one in here then. How about cow-working?
Cow-working. Okay, that's by far the goofiest one. At least I think it is too. So the whole idea with cow-working is basically inviting a cow to your Zoom meeting. So if you or I were here in a Zoom meeting, and if I was more of a, not a faces for radio guy, but a faces for TV guy. Anyway, you'd have you and I here in a Zoom meeting, and all of a sudden, Bessie or whoever, somebody would join our meeting, and it would just be some camera for some chunk of time.
I can't move very well.
And how's this? There's precedent for this. That's what killed me. There's a website out there. I have since come to find out after this, which is again perfect because it's proven the model's going to work movingly. Anyway, thank you. I'll be here all week. But it's called Goat to Meeting. Goat to Meeting. Go to Meeting. Right. So so I just need to right now, and that's not how do we say? I'm trying to move faster with the ones that look like, business models that could last for years. This one's a little bit more tongue in cheek. I don't think like with everything, there's going to be challenges with it. Finding a dairy farmer dairy farmers are some of the hardest working people on the planet. They have like maybe a half a day off a year. It's Christmas Day. So, and I happen to know a couple dairy farmers, but I haven't talked to them about it yet because I know I'm going to have some splaining to do when I go to tell them what's going to happen with their cows.
It's probably the highest margin thing they would do all day is put a camera on their cows. But I think that the harder part is finding somebody who's going to pay you to bring a cow into their meeting, but maybe not.
I've had 3 people that have asked me how much it's going to be, and I gave them a range, and they said, let me know when it's ready to go.
So they want the cow in the meeting.
They want the cow. They're waiting for me to give them a cow answer. Yep. Now, that's just 3 people. That doesn't prove a market. That doesn't prove anything. But, you just have to have however many people with whatever kind of sense of humor, and all of a sudden you have something that might be kind of interesting.
That could get going. All right. Well, so let's. I have a whole bunch of questions.
Sure.
So this is just a handful of the 31 here that you've launched.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you, why so many? Why do all 31 in this way? Why is this the challenge?
Yep. Well, it's been in my head for a while. That's one. I guess that's kind of the simplest answer in some regards. I have talked to, I talked to a recently exited founder who actually did very, very well after running his company for 8 years. And he actually shared a story with me that before he launched this, he was going to do 10 companies over a year. Yes. And I'm like, wow, okay, well, that's cool. He actually got 3 in, and then the third one got very sick, ended up in the hospital. And even the 3 were having some interesting early stage starts to them. Just decided on the other company he really wanted to go all in on, came out of it, and then that's what he did for 8 years. So there are certainly people that have done some amount over some amount of time, larger time frame, be that a year, whatnot. There's something like if you look at Startup Weekend, which is a 72-hour experience of you meet, everybody pitches ideas, you form teams on a Friday night. The teams go about building their things, and then they have something that's an MVP by Sunday night. Some of them even have revenue. So there's Startup Weekend, which is again a 72-hour experience. So there's a lot of things around this. So 31 was literally, again, because I wanted to do 1 a day a month, and I guess I was silly enough to want to do it on a 31-day month rather than February and keep it to 28.
Yes. Okay. So. Well, I mean, we know this from other realms, right? We've seen people run a marathon every week for 50 weeks. We've seen people run a marathon every day, even for some period of time.
Sure.
And so extreme things is kind of cool to test the limits of what we know and understand. And you get that, the challenge of it. But then, okay, so you launch one. Now I've got 31 conversations, ideas, projects, initiatives going,
Yep.
And with each passing day, it becomes much more complex. By the time I'm at the end, now I have only 60 days left to begin getting cash positive.
Yep.
And in that time frame, I have to keep all these balls in the air, these plates spinning, right? And I just see like, oh
Yep.
my God, I can't even keep my one going.
Right. That's a definite challenge that I've never had to face before. That's a
Uh,
big part of it. There are people that are following this, some of whom that want to be on quote unquote teams, even though nobody quite knows what that means yet. So I hope to be able to create a situation where teams might be a split of net revenue for that specific idea. Uh, it's certainly not going to be a situation where I start even beginning to even think about managing 31 teams, because that sounds like its own other level of nightmare too. It needs to be as flat as possible when it comes to management of this, and the teams and the individuals need to self-organize. But you're right; it was and has been complex up until now, and will only get more so. Although I'm also trying to keep the day-to-day execution of things down to what is the one thing that needs to happen next before the next one thing that needs to happen after that. So in a lot of ways, I am doing this differently than I've done any other company I've started, obviously, since 1989, because I would be way deep into one right now. We're 60 days in right now. I'd be super deep into one, and instead, I'm still steps into, quite a few of them, but not even all of them. So, yeah, but I'm not complaining, because I'm the one that made it happen.
So if I was going to do 10 startups like your friend over a year,
Yeah.
I would pull together 10 different leaders and build 10 teams to work on the 10 ideas. I would launch each of them, and I would only be hands up. But it sounds like you're actually doing calls and networking and things like that, not simply giving an idea and marrying that with a leader or leaders to go charge it. Is that right?
That's totally correct. Yeah, there was no way to say I'm going to find, you know 31 people, let alone 31 teams of 3 people to really run with something. That just wasn't a I don't think that was a realistic possibility either. So what I'd like to do is get it to a stage where a small team that likes the idea can do some small tasks and chores towards getting it to the next level, and then maybe it can generate enough revenue to bring on the team to build the company into something more.
Uh-huh. Now, so what's off limits? Are you like you're not actually uh like buying cows or making prototypes or making axe targets or things like that yourself, right?
That it, exactly. That's just it. Yeah, I'm not out there making major purchases. I'm not building manufacturing situations. I'm finding people that can do it and provide that, and trying to provide enough potential upside in some cases too, that if it works, like with the axe throwing target company, it'll benefit the company we're partnering with to build it and to hire people and to help their company grow as well.
So it seems like that there's a fair amount of kind of self-referential stuff in here. So like you've got like exiting and you've got startup housing and it's all there's quite a bit that's around this um whole world that's there, right?
Yeah, I would say there's probably, I haven't done the math to count them exactly. There's probably about a third of the things maybe are related to startups, entrepreneurship, and founders. But
Uh-huh.
that's also my world too, right? That's where I've been living for 31 years. And then there are other things like the axe throwing target. I've never built anything. I've never thrown an axe, like I said. There's the whiskey glasses, the whiskey cones, which are high-end whiskey glasses made of hand blown glass. One of the people that's building it right now again, I didn't have this on day one when we started it, but it is now. And one of the glass blowers is Chihuly trained. So, I mean, super high end stuff. I've never myself, now I've helped some others, I've never myself built a company that has built a physical product before. So this is all new to me. Every bit of it, every day.
You've always been services oriented,
I've always been services oriented and or software as a product, but not physical products.
Interesting. So who are your heroes?
My heroes on the business side of things are, I would say, I would put Richard Branson pretty close to the top, I think. Who, by the way, when I was starting this out, look, do you know there are over 400 Virgin companies? Not that I'm saying this is anything like that. I'm just saying, did you realize? I knew he had many Virgin companies. I had no idea there were over 400. Anyway, I think I've always liked his attitude. I've always liked his the way he goes about things. He seems to enjoy life. He likes to work with youth and people that are oftentimes disadvantaged. And I don't know, he just strikes me as somebody who, when you toss out the who would you like to sit down and have dinner with, he's usually the person that comes to mind. So on the business side of things, that's it. On the social change side of things, probably Muhammad Yunus. You know him, Muhammad Yunus, who built the Grameen Bank for microfinance. He developed the whole concept. I've actually met him face to face a couple of times. Back to the business side. So back in 1996, I got a fax. So it tells you it was 1996 because it was a fax.
It was a fax.
Yeah. It was a fax. I got the full fax. And basically somebody said, I've seen your website. I love it. I love the idea of following up to a website with a fax. But anyway, we have to find a way to work together. So we talked on the phone after that, worked with them for 4 years until they had a really nice exit. But it was Seth Godin.
Oh, yeah, Seth.
Yes, it was Seth Godin. So I've known Seth for quite a few years, worked with him to build Yo-Yo-Dine until they exited Yo-Yo-Dine. I'd put him up there as a hero, even though he's an associate. I'd still put him up there as a hero. And of all the things, and this goes back to other stuff as well too, I've spent I don't know how many hours over the years with him on the phone, especially way back then, exchanging emails. I've still, to this day, never met him face to face.
Oh, no?
Oh. Yeah. So I'd love to be able to sit down and, have a coffee or a dinner or spend some time with him then too.
Yeah. Interesting. It's interesting to hear people's heroes and connections and things like that, right? Who they aspire to be and who inspires them with things. And we also can hear our connection or affinity to any one of the people that people cite, the influence that they've had on us in our life. I certainly have had several connections to Seth over the years and to Richard Branson, and to Muhammad Yunus. So it's really cool.
Well, you look at them too. I would set aside Muhammad Yunus probably, but you look at both Seth and you look at Seth and you really, and Branson too. They're really both kind of, in a certain ways too, they're kind of entertainers. The way that they tell stories and whatnot too, a big part of what they do is entertain in a business sense of things. I don't know. That's the take I get from how I enjoy their stuff anyway.
Yeah, there's for sure a certain amount of that. So now you're how many days into this initiative now?
We've got 57 days left.
Okay.
I'm in the countdown side of things.
So you're a little over 30 days in then. So you've launched all the things, and are you regretting having started this?
There was a time about less than half of the 31 days in, probably at about 10 days in, I did wonder, why did I do this?
Yeah.
Because, I was having to do this thing every day. I was having to write it up. My wife was taking photographs. She was doing editing to help me out, so it sounded somewhat coherent. And I'm like, oh my God. But it's like if you've ever tried to either lose weight or stop smoking or something like that. Well, once you tell enough people, you're committed.
Yeah, there's a certain value in
Yep,
going
yep. So,
like
so
that
yeah, I
gets you.
would say probably someday some guy's going to come along and some gal, and they're going to do 32 days or 365 or whatever. And just like, 8-minute abs became 7-minute abs became 6-minute abs. And you know what? More power to them. That's great. I mean, honestly, I'm having a blast. In a lot of ways, I'm having the time of my life because I'm able to try and do all these things without having basically in some ways to put, all the chips on red or whatever. It's like there's a lot of things happening. Some of these things are working out in ways I would have never expected. Some of them I'm running into roadblocks I never really would have seen. So I'm having a blast.
That's really interesting. So a couple more questions. Before I do that, I want to remind everyone that if the show helped you, we would love it if you would give us a review. Go in there and say something about your experience of the show. That helps us the most. You can also give it a rating, rate it, review it. Those are the things that help us reach more people. You can, of course, pass it along to someone else. That's a lovely way to share the show if it's of value to you. And you can, of course, subscribe, and we'll get them to you every week. You can subscribe either wherever you get your podcasts, or you can subscribe at scalingcoach.com, where we have all of the downloads, all the tools, all that kind of thing. If you want to drop us a line, send an email to info@scalingcoach.com with any feedback, requests, that kind of thing, and we'll be happy to respond to you. I want to give special thanks to our producer, Lucy Summers, who is in the background and before and after every show, getting things ready and making it work and all that. And special thanks to Vern Harnish, author and creator of the Scaling Up Framework and the Rockefeller Habits that preceded it. Our audio is edited by Albert Burge at Podfly Productions, and our show notes are written by Ann Codina and proofread by Tim McGowan. So back to this. What's next for you in this phase? What's the present challenge ahead for you?
The biggest challenge right now, quite frankly, is just sharing information. Because each individual company in its own way is working itself out in interesting ways. I just got some photos of the whiskey glasses today. I just got pictures of the Axe target here over this last weekend. We just put we're doing a 20th anniversary nod to Almost Famous, the movie called Almost Quarantined,
Yes.
where we're having the real world Penny Lane and Ben Fong Torres, who is also represented as the editor of Rolling Stone in the movie as well. So we're going to do a Q&A thing with them. So that's going to be launched, and that's going to be happening later this month in October. All that being said, like you said at the beginning, it's like, well, we're not going over all 31. It's like we just can't. If we spent 3 minutes talking about 31, we'd be almost, an hour and a half into the stupid thing. Yeah. So it's getting the information out and trying to share with people is its own kind of conundrum. It's a really difficult puzzle. So the main thing is I'm working on doing this stuff every day, but I'm trying to figure out the biggest challenge right now is how to share with people what it is I'm doing in a way that's at least vaguely organized so people can see it for themselves.
Yeah. Well, so to tell our listeners, if you want to see what's happening, you want to look at some of the rest of these that we didn't talk about or see how things are going, you should go to 90 Days to Cash Flow Positive. We'll put that link up there, 90 Days to Cash Flow Positive. We'll also put it in the show notes and stuff so you can read it and find out all about it. Oh, Mark, I want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing with us all about your wacky and fascinating project. It will be interesting to see how things are going. It is definitely high on quirk factor, and and I think that's cool. So thanks again for making it a good conversation.
Well, Bill, thanks for having me. Lucy, thanks for producing the show. I appreciate that. And To all the listeners out there, especially some of the newly unemployed 55 million of you in the United States, if I can try to do this with 31 companies, you have that one idea. You don't have to have the business plan. You don't have to raise money. You just have to get it going. So good luck to you. And if I can help with anything, please reach out.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you again next week. Thanks, and keep scaling up.